The cultural wealth of the Ciavieja site goes far beyond the spectacular remains recovered from the early imperial Roman phase. Under the impressive Roman constructions, there are remains that belong to the extensive life of this settlement from El Ejido before its incorporation into the Roman administration. From the Copper Age to the late Republican Roman phase, we have discovered archaeological remains that allow us to establish that Murgi was occupied without any break since the Chalcolithic period. Of course, each of the construction activities that have taken place on this site has directly affected the archaeological remains below, increasing in intensity depending on the extension of the construction operation. For this reason, the archaeological materials from the prehistoric levels are scarce in number and in importance, being, therefore, a less-known phase of Ciavieja. The Bronze Age was a moment of great expansion, taking advantage of the social and economic prospects resulting from the arrival of the Phoenician settlers to the Iberian Peninsula. Little by little, in a progressive but constant way, the settlement grew and developed its well-defined urban layout towards the 5th century BC. During the Carthaginian conquest of the Iberian Peninsula, many important diplomatic, social, and economic changes took place, and Murgi enjoyed an unprecedented process of urban regularization and monumental building construction. Of all the urban changes that took place at this time, the construction of the walled enclosure that would defend the city in these tumultuous moments in the history of the Mediterranean stands out in every way. Our archaeological intervention has allowed us to discover a small section of this fortification at the southern end, although we assume would protect the city in all its perimeter. Indeed, under the O&P rooms, we have found a wall of big ashlars and rubble, of which more than 2.5 meters in height and more than 15 meters in length are preserved. With the information available, we still cannot safely establish whether it was a wall of compartments or whether, on the contrary, we are facing an implecton wall, which is a defensive building with two walls of regular stone blocks with the space in between filled with a mixture of poorer materials. Either way, it perfectly matches the most advanced knowledge of Hellenistic Paleocetic, the military discipline that was in charge of designing the defensive systems. In the excavated section, it can be seen how the wall turns by 30 degrees in order to adapt to the shape of the hill and create protection without cracks against enemy attacks or sieges. This allowed us to safely establish the official limit of the city in the southeast corner in the last third of the 3rd century BC. The urbanization of the Barcid period was not restricted to the creation of this walled enclosure, but at least involved the renovation of this southern neighborhood of the city, as we can see by the location of several blocks through the excavation of their upper ends of the walls. In the future, the excavation of these blocks will allow us to more accurately describe the uses of the soil in this southern part of the city of Murgi. In addition to that, we have found 2 waste areas that will provide us with very interesting data on the economy, diet, and social customs of its inhabitants. Despite the huge dimensions and the resulting economic and political effort involved in the construction of this wall, its life cycle was relatively short, since at the end of the 3rd century BC, a few decades after it had been built, the inhabitants of the city decided to demolish it, at least partially. By comparison, with other fortified sites with similar dimensions and other architectural analyses, we can establish that the wall of Murgi would rise between 6 and 8 meters above the street level. So, with this demolition, more than 2/3 of its original height was lost. Its own ashlars were reused to fill the spaces between the walls, and the streets beside the wall were covered with earth in order to raise the ground. All this happened in the last years of the 3rd century BC, as shown by the odd set of fine wares that were placed after filling the space with earth. A total of 9 small vessels, intended to serve and consume food and drinks, were fully recovered. We think that they could be related to some kind of ritual or communal action carried out immediately after the demolition of the wall. In any case, the economic takeoff of Murgi was sped up in the years following the Second Punic War. As a result of the new Roman administration, the limits of the city fell short for the growing and dynamic population. The need to increase the available urban space and the desire to approach the Via Heraclea, the future Via Augusta, to encourage trade, could be perfectly valid reasons to face the costly dismantling of much of the wall and its expansion to the south. However, the severe damage that the construction of the monumental thermal building would cause to the structures of this late Republican phase prevents us from knowing for sure the use that was given to this new district of the city.